The moment I found the pregnancy test buried deep in Cassidy's trash, my world imploded. But what truly shattered me wasn't just the tiny blue lines confirming her pregnancy. It was the avalanche of secrets that followed. As I clutched the test in trembling hands, my eyes caught something else, a folded note inside the packaging. Gabriel's handwriting stared back at me, each curve of his letters like a dagger to my chest. "Can't wait to tell her," it read. "Tell who, me?" "My sister, the mother of his child." It felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. In that instant, I knew this wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal so calculated, so cruel, that it left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. But the worst part came later, when I unlocked Gabriel's phone, a desperate act born from months of gnawing suspicion, and discovered hundreds of messages between him and Cassidy. Messages filled with longing, promises, and plans for our future. Their words weren't exchanged in secret corners or late-night rendezvous far away from home. No, they were sent while I sat mere feet away, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, scrolling through work emails, or even laughing at some trivial joke during family dinners. How many times had I wondered why Gabriel seemed distracted? Why he no longer held my gaze during conversations? Now I knew. Every text was a lie, every smile a mask, every touch a performance meant to deceive me. Confronting Cassidy was like staring into a mirror cracked beyond repair. She stood there, her hand instinctively covering her belly, as if protecting the life growing inside her, a life conceived not out of love, but betrayal. When I asked how long this charade had gone on, she whispered, "A year and a half." A year and a half. That number echoed in my mind like a death knell. It began right after the miscarriage, the darkest period of my life when I needed Gabriel most. Instead of supporting me, he sought comfort in my own sister, planting seeds for a new family while I mourned the one we'd lost. Cassidy didn't just steal my husband. She stole my dreams, my hopes, my very identity as a wife and potential mother. And standing there, face to face with her, I realized this wasn't just emotional infidelity, it was theft. They had robbed me of my future. The moment I found the pregnancy test buried deep in Cassidy's trash, my world imploded. But what truly shattered me wasn't just the tiny blue lines confirming her pregnancy. It was the avalanche of secrets that followed. As I clutched the test in trembling hands, my eyes caught something else, a folded note inside the packaging. Gabriel's handwriting stared back at me, each curve of his letters like a dagger to my chest. "Can't wait to tell her," it read. Tell who? Me? My sister? The mother of his child? It felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. In that instant, I knew this wasn't just an affair. It was a betrayal so calculated, so cruel, that it left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and loyalty. But the worst part came later, when I unlocked Gabriel's phone, a desperate act born from months of gnawing suspicion, and discovered hundreds of messages between him and Cassidy. Messages filled with longing, promises, and plans for our future. Their words weren't exchanged in secret corners or a late-night rendezvous far away from home. No, they were sent while I sat mere feet away, sipping coffee at the kitchen table, scrolling through work emails, or even laughing at some trivial joke during family dinners. How many times had I wondered why Gabriel seemed distracted? Why he no longer held my gaze during conversations? Now I knew. Every text was a lie, every smile a mask, every touch a performance meant to deceive me. Confronting Cassidy was like staring into a mirror cracked beyond repair. She stood there, her hand instinctively covering her belly, as if protecting the life growing inside her, a life conceived not out of love but betrayal. When I asked how long this charade had gone on, she whispered, "A year and a half." A year and a half. That number echoed in my mind like a death knell. It began right after the miscarriage, the darkest period of my life when I needed Gabriel most. Instead of supporting me, he sought comfort in my own sister, planting seeds for a new family while I mourned the one we'd lost. Cassidy didn't just steal my husband. She stole my dreams, my hopes, my very identity as a wife and potential mother. And standing there, face to face with her, I realized this wasn't just emotional infidelity, it was theft. They had robbed me of my future. The memory of that hospital room still haunts me, its sterile smell, the coldness of the sheets, and Gabriel's detached voice echoing in my ears. "It'll be fine, Olivia," he had said, his tone devoid of emotion as if comforting a stranger. I lay there, curled into myself, sobbing for hours while he stood by the door, scrolling through emails on his phone. At the time, I mistook his indifference for shock or grief, but now I see it for what it truly was: disinterest. While I mourned the loss of our unborn child, the life we had dreamed about together, he was already planning a new future. A future with Cassidy. As I pieced together their betrayal later, I realized they hadn't waited weeks or months. They'd acted almost immediately after my miscarriage. The text messages Julian recovered painted a horrifying picture. "She won't stop crying," Gabriel wrote to Cassidy just days after I lost the baby. "Come over. You'll make it better." And she did, literally stepping into the void of my pain while I lay broken in bed. Every tear I shed became an excuse for them to grow closer. They weren't just stealing my husband, they were erasing me from my own life. But the worst revelation came when I confronted Mother about her role in this nightmare. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at me with that familiar condescending gaze she'd always reserved for moments when I disappointed her. "You've always been weaker than your sister, Olivia," she said bluntly, her words slicing deeper than any knife. "This family needs strength, not fragility. Cassidy has proven herself capable, resilient. She deserves more than you ever could." Her admission felt like another betrayal piled onto the mountain of pain I was already drowning in. Not only had she known about Gabriel and Cassidy's affair, but she actively helped them plan for the future, all behind my back. The trust fund Grandma Rose left for us, she'd been secretly redirecting my share to create a new fund for their child. My mother sat across from me, sipping tea as though discussing weather patterns, casually explaining how she forged documents to ensure Cassidy's baby would inherit everything meant for both of us. "It's practical, Olivia," she added, her voice dripping with disdain. "You wouldn't have used it wisely anyway." I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman sitting before me with the mother I thought I knew. But the truth was clear: she never believed in me. To her, I was nothing more than a failure, a placeholder in the grand design of the Lawson legacy. As anger surged within me, I clenched my fists under the table, vowing silently that I would expose every lie, dismantle every scheme they had built on my ruins. Their cruelty wasn't just personal, it was systemic, calculated, and utterly devastating. As I sifted through the digital rubble of my shattered marriage, Julian uncovered something that made my blood run cold: a series of emails between Gabriel and his law partner, Thomas. The messages weren't just casual updates. They were calculated discussions about me, dissecting every aspect of our relationship as if I were a business deal gone wrong. "Liv's too complicated," Gabriel had written during one exchange. "She questions everything, my decisions, my schedule, even my intentions. It's exhausting. Complicated." The word echoed in my mind like a cruel mantra, each repetition cutting deeper than the last. But it wasn't just his opinion, it was how he compared me to Cassidy. In another email, he described her as easygoing and a breath of fresh air. Someone who didn't demand much but gave plenty in return. Someone who brought him joy. My stomach churned at the thought of him praising her while belittling me behind my back. How many times had I adjusted my life to fit his expectations, only to be dismissed as high maintenance or difficult? The betrayal cut deeper when I remembered all the ways Gabriel had subtly manipulated me over the years. He always discouraged me from pursuing my own career, insisting that I focus on supporting his ambitions instead. "You're amazing at creating spaces," he once said, his tone dripping with feigned admiration. "But right now, your talent is most valuable here at home, helping me build my practice." At the time, I mistook his words for concern, believing he wanted us to work together toward a shared future. Now I saw them for what they truly were: tactics of control designed to keep me dependent on him. His flattery wasn't genuine, it was a leash, a way to tether me to his side, so I wouldn't stray or overshadow him, and I had fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. What hurt the most was realizing how thoroughly he had stripped away pieces of my identity without me even noticing. When we first married, I dreamed of opening my own interior design firm, blending creativity with entrepreneurship. But Gabriel convinced me to shelve those plans, claiming we needed stability before taking such risks. Stability for whom? For him to elevate his social standing through my family connections. Every sacrifice I made was for his benefit, not ours. Even worse, he twisted my dedication into a flaw, labeling me as complicated whenever I questioned his motives or challenged his behavior. Meanwhile, Cassidy, the woman he claimed was easier and more fun, had been waiting in the wings, ready to step into the role I no longer filled. She wasn't just his lover, she was his escape from the wife he saw as a burden. I sat there in the hotel room, staring at the screen, my hands trembling with rage and humiliation. This wasn't just infidelity, it was systematic degradation, a deliberate effort to diminish my worth so he could justify replacing me. The realization burned like acid in my chest. But amid the pain, something else stirred: resolve. If Gabriel thought I was complicated, then fine, I would embrace that complexity. I would become untouchable, unpredictable, and unapologetically myself. Because now, more than ever, I understood that survival wasn't about shrinking to fit someone else's mold. It was about breaking free and building a new one entirely. The night I left, I didn't just walk out, I dismantled myself from the life they had tried to erase. Every step I took was deliberate, calculated, as if I were reclaiming pieces of my soul that had been scattered across the house we once called ours. In the dim light of our bedroom, I opened the antique jewelry box my grandmother Rose had given me on her deathbed. Inside lay the necklace she'd handed to me with trembling hands, whispering, "This is yours alone, Olivia. Protect it." The sapphire pendant gleamed faintly, its cool surface pressing against my palm like a promise, a reminder that I wasn't worthless, no matter what Gabriel or Cassidy or even my mother believed. That necklace became more than an heirloom. It was a symbol of loyalty, not to them, but to myself. As I packed, I moved methodically, pulling clothes from closets where his scent still lingered, gathering documents I knew he'd try to hide, and retrieving every item that bore my name or my history. But there was one thing I refused to leave behind: the framed photo of our wedding day. For years, it had sat on the mantel, a testament to the lie we'd built together. Now, under the harsh glare of the kitchen counter, I tore it in half, the crack of the frame echoing through the empty house like a gunshot. On the back of the shattered glass, I scribbled a note in sharp, angry strokes: "Congratulations on your new family." It wasn't enough to simply leave. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done. Each word felt like fire leaving my pen, burning away the remnants of the woman who had let herself be diminished for too long. When Gabriel came home later that night, I was sitting in the darkened living room, calm and composed, the necklace resting heavily around my neck. He froze when he saw me, relief flashing across his face before he noticed the emptiness surrounding us, the suitcases by the door, the silence that hung thick in the air. "Thank God," he breathed, stepping closer. "I've been worried sick." His voice grated against my ears, each syllable laced with hypocrisy. Did he really think I would crumble? That I would forgive him because he showed up at the end of this nightmare he had created? "I'm not staying," I said flatly, cutting him off before he could spin another one of his manipulative tales. "And neither are you not here anyway." I gestured to the torn photograph on the counter, the edges curling slightly as if recoiling from its own message. His eyes widened as he read the note, the color draining from his face. "You can't mean this," he stammered, reaching for me, but I stepped back, placing distance between us. "Oh, I do," I replied, my voice cold enough to freeze steel. "That's for the family you've chosen over me." The betrayal deepened when Julian delivered the final batch of evidence, a revelation so grotesque it made my stomach churn. Gabriel hadn't just been meeting Cassidy in secret. He had been funding their affair with our money. Using our joint account, the one I had painstakingly managed for years, ensuring we saved enough for emergencies and future plans, he had rented a luxury apartment downtown. The address was unfamiliar to me, but the photos Julian extracted from Gabriel's phone confirmed its purpose. Sleek modern furniture, champagne flutes on the counter, and even snapshots of Cassidy lounging on the balcony. It was as if they were living out some twisted fantasy while I was at home, clipping coupons and debating whether we could afford new curtains. But that wasn't all. Scrolling through the recovered data, I found receipts, dozens of them. Designer handbags, diamond earrings, spa treatments, weekend getaways, all purchased under the guise of business expenses or client gifts. For Cassidy, my husband spared no expense when it came to her, yet every time I asked him for something, a new coat, a dinner reservation at a nice restaurant, he would sigh dramatically, claiming we needed to be more frugal. "We have responsibilities," he'd say, his tone dripping with condescension. Responsibilities? While he was lavishing my sister with luxuries, I was left feeling like a beggar in my own marriage. And then there was my mother, an accomplice in this financial treachery. When Maria handed over copies of the forged trust documents, I discovered something even more sinister. Eleanor's signature wasn't the only one on the amendment. Beside hers, unmistakably forged, was mine. She had impersonated me, not just emotionally by betraying my trust, but legally by falsifying my consent to redirect half of Grandma Rose's inheritance into a fund, meant solely for Cassidy's child. The gall of it, the sheer audacity to use my name without permission, to manipulate legal documents as though I were nothing more than a pawn in her grand scheme, left me reeling. I sat in my hotel room, staring at the damning evidence spread across the bed, each document a shard of glass cutting deeper into my heart. How many times had I defended my mother against criticism, insisting she only wanted what was best for our family? How many times had I trusted her judgment, believing her love for me was unconditional? Now I saw the truth. She viewed me as expendable, weak, a liability to be managed rather than a daughter to cherish. The woman who taught me about loyalty and sacrifice had orchestrated one of the greatest acts of disloyalty imaginable. Her actions weren't just cruel, they were calculated, designed to secure her legacy through Cassidy while erasing me entirely. As anger surged within me, I clenched my fists, vowing silently that I wouldn't let them win. They thought they could rewrite my story, strip away my identity, and replace me with someone they deemed better. But they underestimated me. I was done being the victim. From the ashes of their deceit, I would rise not as Olivia, the betrayed wife or overlooked daughter, but as Olivia, the woman who refused to be erased. The first phone call I made after leaving Gabriel was to Eliza Harper, the lawyer whose reputation preceded her like a storm cloud. Known in legal circles as the marriage destroyer, she wasn't just a divorce attorney, she was a force of nature, dismantling cheating spouses and their deceitful schemes with ruthless precision. When I walked into her sleek office, clutching folders filled with evidence, she didn't waste time on pleasantries. "So," she began, her sharp eyes scanning my face, "your husband slept with your sister, got her pregnant, and your mother helped them hide it." Her tone wasn't sympathetic. It was clinical, calculating. She tapped her perfectly manicured nails against the desk. "Let's burn this house down." Eliza didn't just prepare the divorce papers. She crafted a strategy so meticulous it felt like watching an artist paint violence onto canvas. She suggested filing for full financial disclosure immediately, knowing Gabriel would panic when he realized how much control I had over our shared assets. But that was only the beginning. "If we're doing this," she said, leaning forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "we're not just ending his marriage. We're destroying his career, his reputation, everything he values more than you." The cold fury in her words resonated deeply within me. For the first time since discovering the truth, I felt something other than despair, purpose. Next, I reached out to Julian Winters, my college boyfriend turned head of digital forensics at a major security firm. At first, he hesitated when I explained what I needed, a deep dive into deleted texts, emails, and financial records, but something in my voice must have broken through his professional boundaries. "Liv," he said softly after I recounted every betrayal, "no one deserves to be treated like that." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of someone who truly understood. He agreed to help, despite the risks, because he saw what I couldn't yet admit. I wasn't just fighting for justice. I was reclaiming myself. As Julian worked, he uncovered damning evidence of Gabriel's ethical breaches, not just personal betrayals, but professional ones too. It turned out Gabriel had falsified evidence in two high-profile cases involving Meridian Investments, his firm's biggest client. These weren't minor infractions. These were calculated acts of fraud designed to secure victories at any cost. Armed with this knowledge, I contacted the State Bar Association anonymously, providing them with irrefutable proof. Within weeks, an ethics investigation was launched, threatening everything Gabriel had built. Each revelation fueled my resolve. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about dismantling the system that allowed people like Gabriel to thrive while others suffered. With Eliza guiding me legally and Julian uncovering secrets, I felt unstoppable. Together, we were building a case that wouldn't just end my marriage, it would obliterate Gabriel's carefully constructed life. The moment I stepped into the private dining room, every head turned in unison, their faces frozen in varying degrees of shock. The crimson dress I had chosen wasn't just a statement of defiance, it was armor, a declaration that I was no longer the fragile woman they had tried to break. The fabric clung to me like fire, its bold hue radiating the anger and resolve that had fueled my every move for the past 2 months. As I walked toward the table, I could feel the weight of their stares, the disbelief, the judgment, the fear, but none of it mattered anymore. This was my battlefield, and I was ready to fight. "Well, Olivia," my mother said, her practiced smile faltering slightly as she rose from her seat, "what a lovely surprise." "We weren't sure you'd come." Her eyes darted nervously to the other guests, silently pleading with me not to make a scene. But this wasn't about discretion. It was about exposure. "I wouldn't miss it, Mother," I replied, my voice carrying across the room like a gavel striking wood. After all, family is everything, isn't it? Gabriel stood awkwardly, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty, while Cassidy remained seated, one hand protectively draped over her swollen belly. I took my seat, deliberately placing a large envelope on the table. A gift, I explained, meeting my mother's questioning gaze with a mirthless smile. For the woman who taught me everything about loyalty. The sarcasm dripped from my words, but she maintained her composure for the sake of appearances. How thoughtful, she murmured, forcing a laugh. I'll open it later, dear. Oh, I think you'll want to open it now, I insisted, my tone sharp enough to cut glass. Reluctantly, she reached for the envelope, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled out the first document. Her face paled instantly. What is this? She whispered, her voice barely audible. That's a copy of grandmother's actual trust, I said pleasantly, as though discussing the weather. Not the fraudulent one you drafted to redirect my inheritance to Cassidy's baby. A collective gasp rippled through the room as the gravity of the situation sank in. My mother stammered, trying to regain control, but I didn't give her the chance. Page 2 is even more interesting, I continued, ignoring her protests. It's a letter from the Bar Association confirming their opening in ethics investigation into Gabriel's handling of the Meridian cases. Gabriel shot to his feet, his face contorted with rage. What have you done? He hissed. Only what you taught me, I replied coolly. That family looks out for each other. Except now I'm looking out for myself. When I turned to Cassidy, her expression was one of pure devastation. Page 4 contained the text messages Gabriel had exchanged with his law partner. Thomas messages where he described her as easy and a convenient distraction. She read them in stunned silence before snapping her head toward Gabriel. Is this true? She demanded, her voice shaking. He opened his mouth to respond, but she slapped him hard across the face before he could utter a word. You bastard, she choked out, tears streaming down her cheeks. You said you loved me. You said we would be a family. As chaos erupted around me, I stood up, commanding the room's attention once more. This family doesn't exist anymore, I declared, my voice cutting through the noise like a blade. And I will ensure that all of you pay the price for what you've done. The aftermath of the birthday dinner was nothing short of apocalyptic for Gabriel. Within weeks, his once promising career crumbled into dust. The ethics investigation unearthed not just one or two missteps, but a pattern of professional misconduct, so egregious that it left no room for redemption. He was disbarred, stripped of the title he had worked so hard to earn, and reduced to working as a paralegal in a small firm 2 states away. A shadow of himself, my father had remarked when we discussed it during one of our Sunday dinners. But the humiliation didn't stop there. The financial settlement I demanded wasn't merely punitive, it was retribution wrapped in legal paperwork. Every penny he paid me felt like justice served cold, leaving him drowning in debt while I rebuilt my life with the resources he tried to hoard. Cassidy, meanwhile, faced her own reckoning. Winning full custody of James should have been a victory, but it quickly became clear that being a single mother came with its own suffocating weight. She called me one evening, her voice trembling as she confessed how overwhelmed she felt. I thought I could do this alone, she admitted, but every time James cries, I wonder if he'll ever know what real love looks like. Her words stung, not because they were unexpected, but because they carried the truth of her situation. As the months passed, she began to see Gabriel for who he truly was, a man who had used her as a pawn in his grand game of ambition and greed. During one of our tentative coffee meetings, she told me bitterly, he never loved me. Not really. To him, I was just convenient. The pain in her voice mirrored my own, though I couldn't bring myself to offer her sympathy. After all, she had chosen this path willingly, at least at first. And then there was Eleanor, whose fall from grace was both swift and merciless. Stripped of her position on the Lawson Family Foundation Board, she retreated to a modest condo in Florida, far removed from the glittering social circles she once dominated. Yet even in exile, she refused to let go of her delusions. Her calls came regularly, each one laced with desperation thinly veiled as maternal concern. "Olivia, please," she would beg, her voice quivering. "You've taken everything from me. Don't you think that's enough?" Enough? The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Had she forgotten how casually she conspired to take everything from me? I stopped answering her calls after the third attempt, unwilling to grant her even the illusion of reconciliation. As their lives unraveled, mine began to flourish. Watching them struggle under the weight of their choices brought a strange sense of satisfaction, not out of cruelty, but because it affirmed what I had come to understand: betrayal has consequences, and those who sow destruction must reap its harvest. 1 year after the storm of revelations, I stood in the sleek showroom of Olivia Lawson Interiors, my own design firm, a dream I had buried so deeply under Gabriel's dismissive comments that I'd almost forgotten it existed. The inheritance from Grandma Rose wasn't just money. It was validation. With part of it, I built something entirely mine, untainted by anyone else's influence or betrayal. My first project, boutique hotel renovation, earned me glowing reviews in industry magazines, and soon clients were lining up, eager to work with the woman who turned heartbreak into brilliance. Success came not because I sought revenge, but because I poured every ounce Sescal KGA. Quite tam, Vasang tu val kang viak ne. Ti kang kan la gi fa emma Gabriel tingi la ko fictine pi. Teeter Than Bu Tung Cho Send Mimajisi Lopp Trong Gigi Down. Reconnecting with my father felt like finding a missing piece of myself. He moved back closer to me, taking on a consulting role, mentoring young engineers, a passion he'd abandoned during his troubled marriage to my mother. Sundays became sacred again, filled with laughter over homemade meals instead of tense silences. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset from my balcony, he said, "You remind me of your grandmother." She always believed true strength isn't about dominating others, it's about standing alone when necessary. His words stayed with me, echoing through every decision I made moving forward. Julian entered my life differently, this time, not as an ally in vengeance, but as someone who genuinely cared for me. When we started dating cautiously, he understood my hesitations without judgment. There were moments when I pulled away, afraid of being hurt again, but Julian never pushed. Instead, he reminded me gently, "Not all men are like Gabriel." Those words carried weight, especially when whispered during quiet nights when old scars still ached. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, fragile yet resilient, like new shoots sprouting through ashes. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, memories of Gabriel and Cassidy would creep back, threatening to undo the progress I'd made. Yet each time, I forced myself to confront those feelings head on. "I am no longer a victim," I told myself firmly one night while journaling. "I am a survivor, a winner." It wasn't just about punishing those who wronged me. It was about reclaiming my identity, rebuilding from the wreckage they left behind. Out of betrayal and loss emerged a version of me stronger than I ever imagined possible. As my business flourished and my personal life slowly healed, I realized something profound. Survival isn't about escaping unscathed. It's about transforming pain into power. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who found that pregnancy test and believed her world was ending. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her she wasn't being destroyed. She was evolving. From the ashes of what was lost, I had forged something extraordinary, myself. The journey from devastation to self-discovery wasn't linear. It was jagged, messy, and often painful. There were nights when the weight of everything I had lost pressed down on me so heavily that breathing felt like a battle. But through those dark hours, I learned something profound. Survival isn't about emerging unscathed. It's about finding strength in the wreckage, about building something new from the ashes of what was destroyed. One evening, as I sat by the window of my apartment with a pen in hand, I wrote in my journal, I lost everything: my marriage, my family, my identity as I knew it. But in losing them, I found myself. The words spilled out like tears, raw and honest, a testament to how far I'd come. Standing here now, 1 year after the storm, I no longer see myself as Olivia, the wife who was betrayed or the sister who was replaced. I am simply Olivia, a woman reborn from betrayal and pain. The scars remain, but they no longer define me. Instead, they remind me of my resilience. As I close the final chapter of this ordeal, I made a promise to myself. I would never again let anyone diminish my worth or dictate my path. To Gabriel, Cassidy, and even my mother, I owe nothing, not forgiveness, not regret, not even hatred. What I took from their betrayal was clarity. I am not defined by the roles others assign me. I am not someone's wife, I whispered to my reflection one morning. Not someone's daughter, not someone's sister. I am Olivia, a free, strong woman, ready to face whatever challenges life throws my way. Those words became my mantra, my armor against a world that once tried to break me. And as the sun rose over the city skyline, I smiled, not because the past didn't hurt, but because I had risen above it.